and the guests of our conference. Thank you for participating and listening. And we will start the second session of the conference. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Mиклоша Саньи from the Institute of World Economics. I would like shortly introduce Mr. Sanyi. Mr. Sanyi works in this institute for more than 35 years. He is scientific advisor of the Institute of World Economics, and he was a scientific deputy director, and from 2015 to quite recently, he was a director of the institute. Also, he has teaching experience in some Hungarian universities like Corvinus University, University of Debrecen, and now he holds a position of professor in economics in the Szeged University. So I would like to give a floor to Mr. Sanyi to introduce his research.
Thank you very much. I am sharing my slides. Is this visible for you?
Yes.
Okay, and then I try to start the slideshow. This also works. Yes. So thank you for the nice words. I was thinking in the morning that I could probably ask some questions, but then I very soon realized that many questions that have been tackled by the morning presentations are somehow covered also by my presentation here. And perhaps a kind of answer can be given through this lecture to those issues that have been raised. Most recently, the Hungarian and Polish veto to the next European Union budget. Previously, in the presentation of Peter Havlik, we just saw the declining convergence trends of Hungary, and there were many other issues that can be perhaps partially at least answered through this presentation. What I want to prove or at least indicate is that the Central European countries' development, and especially Polish and Hungarian development, their historical background is so much different than from those countries in the core Europe, that the values that core Europe raises in many documents of the European Union are not quite the same way understood in this region. So this is why the conflicts of interests and maybe even values come to the foreground. But this is what I would like to show. It is unfortunately not a random feature. So it has the proper roots and reasons which can be found in historic development. But these are the most current phenomena as for the motivation, but the historical background of development has already been tackled by many researchers, and also empirical surveys have been carried out. Here I show just 4 of them. And the question can be put more generally, namely, if the new institutionalist agenda of the past dependence is really effective, what is the size of the impact, what kind of conditions have to be present or are present that the past dependent can work, and also the 2 last questions on this slide indicate the more recent application of the past dependence to the Central and Eastern European countries. What were the most important features of the historic models of European development that influence, that carry out influence, and what if a region like Eastern and Central Europe has been under the influence of several different types of development models. This presentation will deal mainly with these two last general questions. And for your information, all of you know that both Poland, historic Poland, I mean, and historic Hungary have been just in the cross-section of the three major European development models. We cannot really say empires, because the Western world was not concentrated in one big empire like Russia or Turkey. The two other development models have been reinforced into big empires. The third one, the Atlantic, how I call it, Atlantic model, had a more nuanced evolution. I really don't want to repeat the historic lessons that all of us know, but I still have to underline that the whole division of the development pattern started at least with the dissolution of the Roman Empire, and the western and the eastern part of the Roman Empire started to develop quite differently. While in the West there was a destruction of the imperial structures and the dissolution process, decentralized power centers emerged. The lack of very concentrated political and economic power gave room for autonomous urban development in this region, and the single most important organization that kept its integrated structure for many hundreds of years was the Roman Catholic Church. This preserved some of the heritage of the Roman Empire. In comparison, in the East, the Byzantine Empire largely saved the late Roman imperial institutions, and it even increased some of the features of that time, so that the political and sacral dominance has merged completely, and the political and economic power centralization came to a very extreme high level. So that in this part of the empire and Europe, the role of the state, the central role of the state increased and became the single dominant power. Then in the 15th and 17th centuries, some changes occurred. Two of them are important for us. One was the Ottoman advance in the Balkans, because this splitted actually the Eastern European development pattern to two types, not even slightly, definitely different types of development avenues. The one which is seen in Russia, and the other is the Balkan or Ottoman model. On the other hand, the Western part, the news was there, the discovery of the Americas that provided a lot of new resources for development in that part of the world. This was partially also the case in Russia. The Russian Empire also expanded in this period towards the south and east. that also provided the Russian Empire new impetus. On the other hand, the third main power center, the Ottoman Empire, lagged largely this additional revenue. Now, what is the impact of these three models in Central and Eastern Europe? I picked five, I guess, the most important five features of the models, and show in this table the differences of the three models and the impact on the East Central European development. The most important one is, of course, the ownership structure. Since the centralized political power lacked for a huge, very long period of time in the Atlantic part of Europe, private ownership became the dominant ownership form. On the other hand, in Russia, the Byzantine heritage prevailed, and all property was state-owned, and the property was only leased to some agents, some landlords, or some persons, citizens, for the utilization. The same also applied in the Balkans, with the not negligible difference that the landlords there were more powerful, so they enjoyed more rights, meaning that, for example, inheritance was allowed. Nevertheless, formally, legally, property remained in state property. And in the East Central European version, similar to the Ottoman model, emerged. The land was not allowed to enter commercial use. On the other hand, it could be inherited. So it was a halfway solution between private and state ownership. Urban development, I already mentioned the importance of urban development in the Western model. In the East and also in the Ottoman Empire, cities, towns were rather administrative centers and not self-governing organizations or institutions. In the Central European version, they were self-governing. On the other hand, they remained rather weak. And we have three more features: the degree of centralization. And I also would like to mention the ethnic homogeneity, because for the current day models that we see, this also has an important impact. We see that the more or less homogeneous social structure, which was based on a federative and contractual agreement among citizens and the various parts and strata of the society, lacked completely in the Eastern and Southeastern model. And as a result, the societies remained rather heterogeneous in these models. And more importantly, the attitude of the different strata in comparison to each other was also very much different. In the East Central European region, unfortunately, the nexus of these strata became hostile. And this hostility was very much used politically later on. And the last feature, which is also important, is the dependence or independence. Unfortunately, the Balkan and East European and East Central European model has a very strong political and also economic dependence. East Central Europe played a mixed role, and it has been shuttling between the Eastern and Western models all the time. The historical development showed this very clearly. And here you see the most important conclusions in the comparison between the Atlantic model and the Balkan model, which was most influenced in Hungary, at least. What I would like to indicate and prove that the Balkan model was not based on competition. It is not a competitive model. It is based on rents and rent seeking and rent cycling. Here I also mention the work of Richard Otti, who published a new book on rent cycling, which is an important feature. He actually applied rent cycling for emerging market economies, but if you read the book carefully, then you just see the parallels in the East Central European countries as well. So the rent-based economies are unfortunately less efficient because they have less incentives to improve economic performance. And therefore, these countries and regions became politically and economically also dependent throughout the last centuries. Dependence was evident from Germany, so I'm talking about the 20th century and current day development patterns. Germany, then later the Soviet Union, and today the European Union. So it was also mentioned in the morning that the European Union plays such a role. It determines certain political and economic development patterns in the East Central European region. And they also play an important role in financing these less efficient models. And political sustainability is supported by the use of these, especially nationalistic arguments, but also other types of populisms are used in the region to cover the less efficient working features of the region. Here you see just a coin which was casted last year in Romania, just as an example of this type of populism. It celebrates the 100 years anniversary of the Romanian troops invading Budapest after First World War. So this is quite clearly an evident provocation against Hungary, against Hungarian nationalities. But if you take a very close look at the news each day, then you will see very similar provocations from the Hungarian government side. So, for example, the Ukraine just banned the entrance of Hungarian officials to the Ukraine because they participated in the election campaign of the Ukraine in the territory of the Ukraine. So this is also a kind of provocation, very clearly seen. So we can see this very strong phenomena in all the countries of the region. Here are some publications. I sent actually the presentation to Dr. Lobanov, so it can be obtained from him, and I would like to thank for your attention. This is a very brief description of this whole story, but the publications are certainly much more detailed. And here is a small cartoon what's going on and is happening in our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanyi. Yes, I've already shared your presentation with the participants yesterday.
Thank you.
So they could get acquainted with it with details. Thank you very much.